we're gonna start getting started again here, guys. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties with sound, but we are back on. So why don't you take it away?
We're good, sound's on. So we're good now. Hi, for those, I think I know everybody up here. For those that don't know me, I'm Nicole Healing. I'm the public health manager at the health department. I'm wearing my Community Alliance hat tonight. I started in this role about 1.5 years ago, specifically with under our DFC grant Community Alliance, and I have since transitioned. But what I'm presenting tonight, per requested, is the Community Alliance Stakeholder Perceptions Qualitative Data Report, which is a mouthful. Presentation is on the screen, so I will kind of go through it, and please just ask questions as you have them. That's totally fine with me. So to start off, why we did what we did. So we feel like we have a lot of number data. I think it's really easy for us to go and find number data related to substance misuse, mental health, all the things that fall under Community Alliance's hat. But the thing that we were missing is how people in the community feel about that and their perceptions around those things. So yes, we have data supporting why these programs exist and why we should do this, but where is the barrier for actually implementing them? How do people want them implemented? What do they want to see? So that's what the goal of this was. In order to collect this data, mostly me, with a little bit of help of other health department staff, did stakeholder interviews. And then I also sent out surveys to police, fire, and the schools, because timing just is what it is. Everyone's short-staffed, and that was the easiest response for them. And then we held the option for 4 focus groups, 2 in Hales Corners, 2 in Greendale, 1 in each was in the afternoon, 1 was like after work. We had a total of 1 focus group, and then another one had 1 participant, and their answers or information feedback is under like the interviews, because that's what it kind of was. Whole list of participants, community members in the focus groups, elected officials, both school districts, Greendale and Whitnall, both police departments. There was a board of health members from Hales Corners, and then St. Stephen the Martyr Church. And then I did most of the interviews, and then we sent it off to have it evaluated. Felt like that was the best option. I don't feel super confident with those skills, so I felt like it was our best option for getting results back. And then it took out any opinions that we had. So the way that I have the slides set up is by the questions that I was asking, either in the survey or the interviews. Surveys were almost identical to the actual interviews. The only thing that was slightly different is that because when I was interviewing, I could ask follow-up questions. I just had some like bullet points after of like, oh, like think about this idea, think about that idea, just to like help people think it through. So defining the issue, so what people thought are the biggest issues, and the way that I worded it was substance use, and I let people choose their substance. So I used the overarching category, and then this was calculated by what people said back to me. So alcohol use was rated as number 1, marijuana, and then vaping or tobacco products. Opioids were actually mentioned a few times, which I thought was really interesting because that was the start of Community Alliance, was mostly opioid use and the start of that pandemic, and now it's clearly transitioned. And then range of opinions and experiences, severity was like all over the board. So increased to like super severe, to kind of concerning, to not really there, to it's a hidden issue. It was just all over the place. But I do think that's probably a pretty good representation of how community members feel, although this was a very small subset. That would make sense. I have quotes on the side. I'm not going to read them off. If you want to read the quotes, they're in the stakeholder report. I think trustees, I'll have a packet with them. Otherwise, they can be found on the whole report is on the Community Alliance website. So for readiness of change, or readiness for change, this was a scale. So asking on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you think the community is to change? Many agreed that community members would do what they could to ensure health and safety of other members. I absolutely 110% agree with this. For someone that was like never in this community before I started working here, like I think that statement is a really good representation of Hales Corners and Greendale itself. Everyone I talked to seems to feel that way too. Many people talked about community values of looking after one another and supporting each other, which ties back to that first statement. However, there was not a consensus on how ready the communities are to take action around substance misuse. A lot of variation was given in opinions. So again, a range, no like direct consensus, large range, which kind of reinstates that we have to do many things to get to different people. So next slide is the thoughts on reducing substance misuse. The three biggest things that came up were education, communication, and relationships. Education, school-based, and then specifically for parents, and then for employees and employers and employees. Education alone easily had the most number of responses. There were 50 unique identifying mentions of education. Communication, emphasis on public awareness and getting information out, making sure that we're posting in many different spaces. People talked about physical spaces and online spaces. And then being at community events and informing the public at events that already occur. And then relationships was that third one, interpersonal relationship building. Specifically, child-parent relationships were brought up. And then community members and their community resources, fire and police departments were brought up the most there. So then we talked about what's working, what's not working, and what have other people seen. Top responses for what's working are school-based education. So big shout out to all three of the schools plus the parochial schools in our jurisdiction, covering those two communities. And then interpersonal relationships, which I think relates back to this previous comment that I made about watching out for each other. What's not working, people had mentioned that lack of resources, reach a message, and modeling behaviors are things that they identified as not working in our community. And again, I just wanted to know that this is perceptions, not necessarily what actually is or is not working, but this is what people feel like we need more of. And then what's working in other communities, most people just kind of blank stared at me when I asked this question, but it was a good response and made people think and look for things outside of this community of when they go elsewhere, what else do they see? And when they go to events in a different municipality, what are they seeing there? So I think it got a lot of people thinking about those. I can say that after this, I had people that participated that would send me news articles or drop them off at the health department. So I think that's a positive that people were actually going out of their way to look at things. Addressing different groups in our community, most people agreed that addressing different groups was needed. So youth compared to adults, compared to seniors, everyone's got unique needs. Great, that's evidence-based. We're very happy to see that the perceptions line up with that. What I thought was really interesting was the difference in youth versus adults. So for youth, it was really a focus on prevention, provide education. Whereas adults, it was intervention, so therapy, treatments, punishment, that type of thing. Youth were looked at as being innocent, where adults were looked at as being not innocent or not willing to make changes. And then the other comment that was made for youth was a lot of discussion around peer pressure, and having a youth space could be beneficial. That was brought up a few times. Switching gears a little bit in how questions were asked with this. We talked about prevention, recovery, and harm reduction, asking participants what their idea of what those definitions are. I have them listed on the slides. Participants for prevention, pretty spot on for what the accepted definition is. Harm reduction, people didn't really know. I think that was a good education tool for me and some of the people that are in Community Alliance that are work approved to be there, so different organizations, because we use that term freely and not recognizing that people don't know what it is. And then recovery had a couple different things associated with it. Overall, pretty close to what the definition is. Participants defined it as being abstinent, sobriety, or seeking abstinence, active involvement in the process of change or healing, and a person acknowledging they have a problem and taking action to change it. The definition of recovery is a little bit broader because it covers things like surgery recovery, or not specific to substance use, but that was the context here. And then looking at barriers and resources and what people identified here. Barriers, limited scope and hours of existing resources, the cost, and potentially stigma attached to it. I think a lot of these, the things that were mentioned here were pretty common thoughts that people have. And then resources, identified as healthcare organizations, schools, the health department, the reference to Hills Corners and Greendale, different hotlines such as 211, 988, and then there are like suicide hotline, Trevor Projects, things like that. And then interpersonal relationships, so relationships with a trusted adult. And then last, before we get to next steps, these were two things I just thought were kind of interesting that were pulled out. So perceptions over time, like a lot of participants, I don't have the percent written on here, but I know it was over 50%, talked about severity, acceptability, and accessibility for substance use, and that was pretty consistently brought up. And then social media and isolation and how those ideas interact with substance misuse were also a concern to a majority of respondents. On the other side, you can see that 30% of respondents specifically mentioned social media and technology as a concern. And then we specifically talked about vaping and accessibility, concern of substances being laced with other unknown things, talked about change, and when talking about change, a lot of people reference the 70s. Law enforcement seeing an increase of those using, and has not changed much, but it's just shifted over time. And then last notable topics, COVID was brought up pretty frequently, and the pandemic affecting substance use treatments, mental health, and resources available. And then the 77% of interview and focus group respondents talked about family or parents in both positive and negative ways. So families were brought up, but it was just a matter of how they were brought up, as like a positive source or a negative source. A majority was positive, as I talked about, interpersonal relationships were brought up quite a bit. So how is this being used? Community Alliance will use this, so I will present basically the same thing at our August meeting, which is going to be right before the start of our next grant year. We're going to use it to direct initiatives that we're doing. We're making sure that our current initiatives align with the information gathered. So things like making sure we're not specifically focusing on one group, we're only doing one thing over and over. We need to be able to reach that broad spectrum. Continuing to utilize already existing resources and communicating that they exist. Since the concern was that there are a lack of resources, we want to make sure we're getting those things out there. And then last, mapping out how to address concerns brought up by stakeholders in the report. So taking the concerns that were brought up and how we can best address them. That's all. Thanks, Colleen.
What was meant by the youth space? Is that like a youth center?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the two interviews. One of them specifically said like a rec center, essentially.
Okay.
The other one said space, because it was two interviews for sure that I remember being like, I could picture the people that it was. So like a rec space,
Okay.
And it was brought up in the context of like a senior center or a youth center, a rec center, places to go play basketball.
Okay.
And that like the Panther Pub was brought up a couple times too, as like high school students can go there after school, and a space to gather, essentially.
First off, just phenomenal presentation here.
Thank you.
And well done, and so forth. You might have said it before and I missed it, but since this is Greendale and Hills Corners, are you making the same presentation to the Hills Corners?
I have offered it, yes. I'm not doing it yet. I'm not scheduled to, but I have offered it.
You have offered
Yep.
it? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, item B, BOT 2356, discussion and next reaction on food share EBT program for the downtown markets.
Just getting your steps in. Okay. All right, I'll read it. All right. So in an effort to uphold our mission of the downtown market, by expanding the accessibility of healthy, fresh food, the Greendale Downtown Market is considering participating in a food share EBT program, which also formerly was like food stamps. So at participating markets, customers with now the SNAP EBT can swipe their Quest cards at the market info booth to receive farmers market currency that can be spent at individual vendor stands. By providing an EBT program, individuals who may not have been able to shop at the market before now have more opportunities to do so. which in turn grows the market by expanding the amount of attendees, so the people who maybe wouldn't attend the market prior, and also the revenue for vendors. This is money that people would not have been spending otherwise that now the vendors, it's additional revenue. And according to UW Extension, 14.4% of the entire population of Wisconsin receives food share. In addition to the village of Greendale, 15.6% of the village receives food share benefits. The 18 markets in Milwaukee County, not including the Hales Corners market, since that one just started, so the 18 pre-existing markets in Milwaukee County, Greendale is one of 2 that does not participate in EBT. So this program is widely available everywhere else. I didn't want to look more into the state of Wisconsin as a whole, but just in Milwaukee County, of those 18 markets, there are only 2 that don't participate in food share. And so we are looking to have this food share EBT program. The Greendale Health Department will help provide some of the resources needed to have the program thrive. A successful EBT program requires a POS system to process the, the transactions, in which the health department can utilize one of their iPads as a wireless device, and then a free POS device through Total Pay Go is provided through a federal grant program called MarketLink. So essentially the cost for processing those transactions is essentially free, since we already have the pre-existing sources from the health department, and then through this grant it is free to use the Total Pay Go. As well as the Community Development Block Grant Program that the Health Department currently received will be utilized for some of the fees associated with this program. It's approximately $15 per month to process transactions for smart devices, so it's 15 cents each per transaction. So estimating that's 25 transactions a market. And that also varies, but that's an average of how much is being spent a month. And then a substitute for legal tender, which is such as tokens, will be required at the market. So the POS device operator processes the customer's SNAP EBT card with charging the requested amount, and then provides the customer tokens of equivalent value. So we've looked into tokens that will be utilized essentially, so somebody swipes their card, we give them these tokens, and then they use those tokens to pay for things at the booths, and then we will reimburse the vendors. And so those tokens are a one-time cost of approximately $250. So the health department will help pay for some of those things. And then a dedicated intern can and should be used to run the EBT program at a market. So a staff person can fill a variety of roles, including staffing the EBT table during the market hours, logging the transactions, reimbursing the vendors, training new program vendors, rule enforcement, connecting with organizations, and program promotion. So an intern would be handling essentially all of the EBT program requirements. So they would do the back-end accounting processes, they would be like the face of the program, they would be handling like the vendor reimbursement and everything. And we estimated for a one-day market, running a program will take an average of 5 to 10 hours a week, depending on the volume of transactions and how actively the program is managed. So with a smaller market like ours that doesn't have a ton of vendors that are available for the EBT program, I mean, we do have quite a few, more so than years past, but we are estimating that we would need roughly 5 hours a week to help for both the market and the back-end accounting, everything with it. So that is kind of what the whole process would entail. Is we already have the infrastructure needed with like the like POS devices. We have all of the help that we need from Food Share and Feeding America. Really what we would just need to make this successful is an intern to help run this program. So that is kind of everything for it.
I think it's so great that we're doing this. There's so many people that need to be able to use their food carts, and we have really great vegetables and other products, and it is filling a need. Question I have for you, and maybe you haven't got around to it yet, but because we haven't started the program, but at the end of who's going to be responsible for the audit? Is there going to be an audit for these? Is that the intern?
Yes.
Or is that going to be someone in the health department?
So this would be the intern's position. So they are the ones who they would do like the reimbursement process, the tracking of all the transactions and everything. I think maybe for an auditing, we haven't really discussed that far ahead if it needs to be audited, but that's also why it's suggested to have a dedicated position for this rather than using volunteers to handle this, just because it does handle transactions. And you do make a really good point though, that this is, again, 15.6% of Greendale residents utilize food share. And at the market, you can use your EBT food share for more than just fruits and vegetables. Even including accessory food, so any food that is not like hot and ready to eat at the market can be used, your food share benefits can be used for.
It's fantastic. I recommend, as you get onto this, coming from my banking background, I guess, you may want to have a second person just to cover on an audit, verify the intern. And I'm sure you're going to set that up as time goes forward, but you can avoid potential things down the road. Thank you for doing that.
I have a couple questions. How many vendors want to participate?
So that's one thing that we need to work on. So there is an application process for this. So we started our application process. We were going to get this approved. I've started discussing with the vendors. Right now we do have 2 vendors who accept Senior Nutrition Farmers Market Program. I don't remember what the SNFMP. So we do have 2 vendors that already accept this on their own. This year, it's just to gain more recognition with the vendors to accept this. A lot of markets require it of their vendors. So maybe that's something that we look at for next year, is that that's a requirement for them to participate. And again, there is no loss for any of the vendors. This is just additional revenue that they wouldn't have had. So right now I have 2 vendors that already are accepting other food share programs. And I think this year is just kind of encouraging them to do it. I think this market in particular in the past has not done it because there was not enough vendors that were able to be redeemed for this. And so a couple of our vendors, actually quite a few of our vendors this year are brand new to farmers markets. They've never done another farmers market before, so I think it's also just kind of like lack of knowledge. They don't know that this exists.
Where would the intern be housed? At the health department or?
So that is one thing that we were discussing. So there is funds available through the health department for an intern. So this intern would work at the market though. So they wouldn't be having a lot of other like outside of the market time that's used. We had discussed that it could be potentially a health department intern. However, I know that we had said if there was an intern like through the tourism and events, like my position, and then that way this person can also help at the market do all the setup and tear down. Essentially because I don't think it is I don't think I should be the person who is running the EBT program because that means that I am essentially only at the market, I have to be available at the market for the EBT program the entire time. So, events that take place during the market such as Hay Days, the Garden Walk, Village Days, I wouldn't be available to help for since I'd be running the EBT. So if we had this position through the tourism and events, then this person can also help with the things that I am doing at the market. They can help with the vendor load-in and everything and vendor coordination day of. Yes.
I'll also add, housing them through Annalise makes more sense because she's the one that coordinates the market. Having them housed at the health department, although we have funds that could potentially be used for it, it wouldn't make sense completely just because we don't handle the farmers market. So we're here to support, but not necessarily house that intern.
So if we only have one intern trained on this, what happens if they're sick on a Saturday? Will more than one person be trained if that person can't, or they have a wedding or?
Yeah, I think always plan B and C are always fantastic. So Feeding America has been Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin has been a really huge help in helping us with this. So we had reached out. They were someone that I interned with last year during a master's program. So when we got the block grant, I had reached out with just what ideas you have, because this is a very new territory for us. It's not something we do. So they had talked about farmers market match, which we would be able to do with this program. And then we looped in UW Extension through Milwaukee County, and she was ready to help get us up and running with this. We just talked about all the benefits. And then Feeding America also said they would help teach all of us, tell us all the differences between all of the food share programs, because even as someone that was there all summer, I could not tell you the difference of all of them. So they would help us train. And that could easily be if we need someone from the health department, we could do that. Mine and Ashley's goal is to have an intern pretty consistently with us too, not doing this, doing other stuff. So I think there's always backup.
Right, and, we had discussed if a health department intern right now, if they could be utilized for an
Yeah.
occasional market. But again, if this position is through tourism events, then that alleviates the need for me to be at every single market. So, I'm there at 5:45, I'm there till 12:45. And, this past weekend was great because I was able to go have a garden walk meeting in the middle of the farmer's market. If I am the person who then is running the EBT program, though, then I can't do anything like that. But
Trustee Sell.
I just know how hard it is to find staff right now, so are we gonna be able to find someone to do this 5 hours a week for $10 to $15?
I think a paid internship is high incentive for a lot of college students for not having many internships in this area that pay you. I don't see it as a huge barrier for us. I hope.
And I personally have a lot of experience with recruitment, and I have a lot of experience with hiring, so I don't ever look at that as a barrier.
Okay.
Trustee Martin.
I do think it makes perfect sense to have them housed with you under your umbrella. They can also use to help you fund all of your myriad of other duties and that. And so I would advocate that we do place you there rather than health department. Just use their fund.
So I'm surprised that we've never heard about this before, and that we're only the two, us and someone else that don't have it. I mean, that's crazy. So I'm glad you're bringing this up. I definitely think it's of value. But the internship then would be totally covered by a grant. We would not be off about any cost for that.
Yes. However, if it is coming out of health department funds, it is only for this program. They cannot help families with other programs.
Right.
They can't what?
They can't help her with other programs, so it needs to be related to the grants that we
I
have.
don't think
then.
we need it for anything else, right?
Right, because
Wouldn't that be?
it would be, I mean.
I need to look at, see what the requirements are for each of the grants that, I have two that I'm thinking of that could potentially work. I just don't know all of the requirements off the top of my head, so I would have to look and see. But that would be the downfall, so if they did the 5 hours, it would be like this program,
Specifically for this program,
only.
right.
Unlike a general intern, so if you did up to 10 hours a week and used the funding that was tax levy for an intern, that could be a little more broad with whatever she needs help with.
But so if it is a position under me, that person could help with, like, the event aspect of the market. If it's a position for the health department and, like, through grant funds, then it's helping with the EBT health department related activities. So it's a little bit more multifaceted.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can only be used for food, right?
For this, the black
CBGB
grant, whatever,
or
none of those orders go in. Yes, food only.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't cost us anything.
I'm just wondering if there's a way you do implement this and you can identify the Greendale people that are using this in some of the children's fair.
That's a good one.
So something that Feed America offered, which I'm super excited about, they're gonna go with Kathy to a blood pressure clinic next month. Hopefully two, we're gonna trial it at one. Two, they have food share outreach specialists that they volunteer, like Feed America pays them, and they volunteer to go out in the community and they help sign people up for food share benefits. So I think that'd be a really great way to, like, one, share all the resources that we have with the many gardens that we have that have food, especially seniors, because there are a lot of seniors that are on food share, and like being at the senior center and the food that goes in there. So I think it'd be a great space to share all the resources we already have too.
Right, so if that, this person is able to connect all of these programs, like the community food banks and everything, like that is perfect. It's all very interconnected for Greendale residents. And again, that's, Nicole and I were talking about today, that percentage of people in Greendale who use food share it's pretty high. I mean, it's a chunk of people. Like, it's not like nobody in Greendale needs it.
I'd like to move to approve the food share EBT program at the Greendale Downtown Market and the creation of a market intern position in the salary resolution with the pay range of $10 to $12.
Second that.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not real clear. You're talking about someone who will be paid for with grant money, but be paid for out of the village as well?
No.
No, it needs to be one or
One
the other, right?
It has to be one or the other.
So we're saying grant money. Right?
Okay.
So, and
what's-
this is also, oh,
Well,
sorry.
I think the health department also has intern money at the care convention, right?
For specific things. So if we use a whatever the letters are, the block grant, it has to be like this specific, but like we're using our DFC funds to pay for an intern that we have right now.
So how are we gonna pay for it?
Right, this would be
Yeah.
roughly $750 for the rest of the summer. So this would only be able to take place, there is an application waiting program, so if we got the program up and running immediately after application approval, we're looking at them to do 12 markets total. So an estimated $750, $720 to $750. So if this was a position that is paid for through the village, then this person would also be able to help with like the event-related things. If this was a person that is grant funded, then.
I also just want to add, like, this grant funding is like done in June, so like this is not a sustainable option that we need to think, just moving forward, we need to think about it. But that the block grant money has to be used ASAP, essentially.
So how much can you use of the block grant?
We can use the 750. Like, that's just to like keep in mind if we keep doing something like this, it's not a
This is
sustainable
for
option
this
right
year.
now. Yeah, it's this year only.
Can we amend that motion just for this year?
Well, I mean, yeah, we have to budget for it for next year. I mean, to me, this is kind of a trial thing, to see how it goes, to
Yeah.
see what the staffing needs to be like, so it's tough to say what future years it'll look like anyway, so. I think I would expect this motion is covering the plan for this year to try this out, and then we'll review the budget process.
From the CBDG grant though.
Well, it's either that or, but it's only $750.
Okay, I guess I want to know where it's coming from.
Well, so it's,
We don't have extra
it's
money.
it's one or the other, or is that what you're saying? It
I
can't
would
be
say it needs to be in the motion what it's being used for. Or what grant, or what like budget source it is. I would do one or the other. If an intern's gonna be more than the 5 hours specifically for this, it's gonna have to come out of tax levy. If it's only for this and we're only doing 5 hours is what we decided, like to be at the market for that specific, then it can be the grant money.
So what if we pay an hour or two out of ours and then use your?
Then they can probably do more.
Yeah.
That's what I would think would be.
Yeah, we had talked about, during the budget process last year, I don't think we actually put a line item in there, but we had talked about allowing for an intern, knowing that we were taking on, Annalise's position was taking on this market as a new thing and having an intern to assist, so I think it'd be reasonable. It'll have to get absorbed in the tourism events budget to, a split of the $750, half of that being from the fund, and then half of it from the CDBG grant and half of it from
CDBG.
tax levy.
Yeah.
Okay, I want my motion. Say that.
I'll second that. Change to the motion.
I will.
Trustee Guardian?
Aye.
Trustee South?
Aye.
Trustee Elder?
Aye.
Trustee Cachman?
Aye.
Trustee Marisak?
Aye.
Trustee Owen?
Yes.
It's a good thing.
Well, it isn't, because the way that right now, that every single minute she has to account for with public celebrations, and it's like, it's going the opposite direction, everything's getting charged to public celebrations for this. You'll have to look at the budget right now, how she has to account for every time, this is just more cost.
It's not that much more. I mean, my time is more just tracking, because my time, that
you know
money
how
is,
that sheet came from
right,
the
but that
minutes.
money was already being spent regardless. Now we're just keeping track of where it's going. So, because that money was already, that money was being spent regardless on my time, on DPW time. It's not new money, it's just being kept track of where it's going, so.
Coming out of there.
Right, it's money that was regardless, so, was coming from there
Well,
regardless.
it's just for this year.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you for bringing this forward. It's a great thing. Trustee Barbian, I have to leave. I know there's only 2 things left, but I'm very late for something. Can I have you take over the last 2 things?
I'd be honored.
All right, thank you. All right, take care, guys.
Number 10 for tonight is the offices reports. Police, fire, public works, water, health, library, village manager's report, and village president's report. First off, any questions before I go to village manager's report for any of our departments from any of the trustees? I want to say everybody's put in
Hoping I add something if I could.
Absolutely.
Just 2 things real quick. You see a pamphlet was handed out to you for a blood drive. Blood Center came to us, asked us for help. It's going to be on Friday, July 7th at the firehouse from noon to 4. There's 2 ways to sign up on the flyer. They'll be out throughout the village. Our goal is to get 32 people, so hopefully everybody can help out. The other thing I'd like to bring out is I'm certainly not a big one for giving out accolades because the fire department, we have a job to do. It's part of our job, but I have to bring this case up to everyone's attention. This past Saturday, June 17th at about 12:15 in the afternoon, a call came in from one of our care facilities for a diabetic having problems. Not really a big deal, we deal with diabetics all the time. Med 44, Engine 41 responded to 4 people. On scene, we get there, the caregiver greets us at the door, said the patient's in the back room, and he was having a low blood sugar. Our guys go to the back room, find the patient sitting on the ground with his head slumped down. Patient was quickly checked, found out that he was not breathing. At that time, everything changes. They quickly laid him flat on the ground, began CPR, IV was started, Lucas device was put on, and then came the airway. The crew consisted of Lieutenant Kyle Kierzak, firefighter Jim Hintz, Tim Couillard, and Connor Reedsberg. Jim happened to be the person that was on the airway he was trying to bag. And normally when you're bagging, air goes in usually pretty easily. He said air was not going in, something's wrong. Tried to reposition the head, tried to bag some more. It did not go in. They got out their video intubation tool, put a video down his throat to see what was going on inside the throat. Some foreign substance they found in his airway. They pulled out the intubation tool. It smelled like peanut butter. They quickly asked the caregiver, is he miss peanut butter or something? She said, yeah, he just had a peanut butter sandwich because his blood sugar was low. So then they started to try to get the ET tube down his throat. It wouldn't go through the peanut butter. They tried to suction, wouldn't come out. They tried to flush it, suction some more, still wouldn't come out. All this CPR is still going on. At this time, they talked real quickly and requested to do a surgical tricothyrotomy, which if you watch the movies, it's taking a scalpel, cutting your throat open to get your tube in there. Very dangerous move. You got to be able to do it deep enough, but you don't want to go through the airway and you want to be in the right spot. That's not been a practice in Whatcom County until last year, and it's never been done. So the Greendale paramedics were the first to do a cricothyrotomy in the field. The patient ended up being transported to St. Luke's. The doctors there were very impressed, and happened to be the doctor that our crew talked to, because anytime you have an invasive move, we talk to the head doctor at Freighter, happened to be our medical director at the time. After his shift at the ER at Freighter, at 5 o'clock at night, now again, this happened at noon, the doctor felt it was important enough, he came to the Greendale Firehouse to talk to the 4 that performed this. Again, they said the doctor was very impressed. These guys are going to be asked already to be on different EMS and OEM podcasts, possibly throughout the nation, and explaining what they did. Again, this is very hard and something hopefully you never have to do, but kudos to them for an excellent job.
Well, thank you.
Is he fine now?
What?
Is he fine now?
They ended up breathing for him. He had a pulse to the hospital, but he has passed.
Well done, and what a phenomenal update. Shows how well trained you have. Questions of the chief? Okay. Other questions for any other managers? No. Village managers report.
I have a few things. The village, we've talked about previously, the village and the school district are working collaboratively on a recreation and park planning study. And so we will have a community engagement meeting on July 12th. So that's going to be in the upcoming magazine and in the newsletter. Open to all community members, July 12th at 6 p.m. at the high school cafeteria. So that's where we're going to be asking for input on the plan. Then there will also be a public survey process that will start on that July 12th through about August 7th, and that will be a survey that people can do hard copy or online, and that will be advertised in our newsletter going out around that time as well. So that project will be ramping up here. I did add an article on our website, and we'll have more information in newsletter and the magazine coming out this summer here. There have been some recent articles in the Milwaukee Business Journal and other publications about the status of Southridge Mall. So that process continues to move along. It's a legal process at this point. It's a complex legal process involving creating a new REA easement document with the mall, with the other entities at the mall that will allow our Boston Store redevelopment project to move forward. It has been suggested that should the village have an economic development director involved with this process, however, an economic development director would be involved with things like securing a developer, negotiating a development contract, financial terms, TID creation, and these are all things that we've actually already completed. So at this point, it's really a legal process. We have a very reputable, experienced legal team working with the village and hope to be concluding that process this year, but hopefully within the next couple months. This Saturday, June 24th at 10 a.m. is a ribbon cutting for Greendale Chiropractic, a new business. Very excited to have 5632 Parking Street. So I believe that's open to the public, and they've been already great community members getting involved with the chamber and that sort of thing. So very excited to welcome them to the community. And then we will not have a first meeting in July due to 4th of July. So our next village board meeting, unless something urgent comes up, will be July 18th. If something more, time sensitive comes up, we will schedule a special meeting if we need to.
Nice update. Thank you so much. Questions for manager? I see none, so I'll move on to number 11, citizens' comments. Persons wishing to address the board are asked to state their name, address for the record, limit their comments to only one time, limit their comments to 3 minutes or 5 minutes if representing a group of persons. Citizens' comments should be limited to a period not to exceed 15 minutes. Please note that the village board can only discuss matters listed on this agenda. So, people that want to do any citizens' comments, please start forming the line to the left and out the door. Oh,
Jeff Burberdam, 5601 Bramble Court. I just want to give you an update of what's been going on with the trail group, our group putting the 5K run together. And I just want to say we started this about a month and a half ago, and our first goal was to get into the comprehensive plan. Thanks to the board, it has been approved. The second was to have this fundraiser, a 5K run, 2-mile walk. It has gone very well. Since January, I probably put about 1,000 hours in to get this thing working. I know I was in Florida But you know how businesses are, they can be from home, they can be from anywhere. I've had a lot of phone calls, a lot of FaceTimes, and it's really going forward. So I want to say first that we've got a lot of sponsors. JJ was one of the major sponsors. Grand Haven's a major sponsor. Ricardo's, Broad Street Coffee, Panther Pub, No Cheese. And No Cheese is allowing us to use their patio. We're going to have a DJ. And we announced the winners first, second, and third by age brackets. And so we're going to have a DJ with music. They're going to allow us to have one free beer and one soda. And it's going to be a really, really good event. It's going to be really nice. And the Broad Street Coffee is giving us a free smoothie. Anybody that does a run gets a free smoothie. Let me see. Milk can, 10% off any breakfast. The walk ends at the milk can, so it's kind of nice that they can sit and have breakfast. And the run ends at the middle school, so it's pretty close to where No Cheese is. We have a website now. It's the GreendaleTrailAssociation.com. We also have a paper that, as you've seen in the village, about how to sign up and all that. Another website with that. So we got over $2,500 in sponsors. We have probably about 35 to 40 people that have already applied for it, and it's 2.5 months away. Our goal is 200. I think we're going to hit all of our goals. So I want to thank the board and everybody else that's been involved with helping us out. Thank you.
Thank you for all you're doing for it, too.
Thanks, Jeff.
Other comments from the audience?
Joe Russ, 1600 West Shuttle Drive, New Berlin, representing 559997 Basswood Street.
No.
Sorry.
Disregard that.
Thank you. Yeah, that was, yeah, wow. I've noticed that there's been a call for volunteers for the 4th of July festivities, and since they're coming up, I thought I'd give my experience in volunteering, particularly last year. I volunteered with the parade for 4 years, from 2019 to 2022. Even though there wasn't one in 2020, we still had to do all the planning, even though it didn't happen. But last year was my last, and also for those of a few others. The parade chairman and I both wanted Grange completely closed at 76th Street. The manager of the Speedway didn't have an issue with that, but our police chief did. He claimed there'd be traffic back up on 76th Street to get into the Speedway. Considering how little traffic there is on the 4th of July, that's highly questionable. Had we done that, all units could have been on Grange and not on Selfridge's Ring Road. So on parade day, there was a village garbage truck and a snowplow truck blocking Grange just east of Speedway and Grange, along with a DPW pickup. As the last units were hitting Northway, I looked west and saw the pickup driving in circles around the plow truck. So I pedaled down there to see if they could bring the pickup truck up so we could start putting the cones and so forth in it, as we had done the year before and worked really well. With all of us working together, the job gets done a lot quicker. Nope, they couldn't leave until the chief told them as they were protecting the intersection. I was a bit perplexed, as anyone could get around them as they drove around the plow truck. A few days after the parade, there was a wrap-up meeting. I heard at that meeting, and the chief said the volunteers shouldn't be running the parade. Upon hearing that, my thought was, well, you're welcome, is the only thing I can say here. As the holiday approaches, I would suggest that if we need this extra level of security, we actually make sure those being paid are at their assigned locations. I would also suggest that department heads remember who they work for and show a bit more respect for the volunteers that make the activities in this village possible. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience who wishes to speak? Okay. I'm going to close citizens' comments. I'll wrap it. I hit the gavel. Thank you for that. Okay. I can't reach it. Okay, anybody else have anything else we want to talk about at tonight's meeting? You know me, I hate to go to closing it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to adjourn, and we have a second. Any discussion? I think we've been a short meeting here, go a little longer, but, okay, then I'm going to ask for a vote for a short meeting.
Trustee Barfield.
No?
Trustee South.
Aye.
Trustee Unger.
Aye.
Trustee Beckler.
Aye.
Trustee McFall.
Aye.
Trustee Alette.
Aye.
Motion carries, I guess we're adjourned. Thank you all. Good.